Good day, my name is Mary Nicole Sapiera from Cebet 22501P. Our topic is all about the oral lore from pre-colonial times. Notes from Philippine Literature, A History and Ethnology by Benedito Lumbera. The first period of Philippine literature history is the longest. Long time before the Spaniards and other foreigners landed the Philippine shores. Our forefathers already had their own literature stamped in the history of our race. 1521. The first voyage around the world in human history. It was Magellan discovered the Philippine archipelago in 1521. The archipelago was named as Las Islas Filipinas by the Spanish explorer Ruy Lopez de Villalobos. In 1896, it came to the Philippine Revolution, which lasted 2 years and was involved in their final stages in the Spanish-American War. Philippinization of Spanish Catholicism. Philippinization is also known as the condition of being Filipinos. Catholicism rapidly spread during the early years of Spanish colonialism. Catholic and Spanish state were inseparable, and the religious played a predominant role in the administration of the Philippines. As a result, they were deeply implicated in the exploitation of Filipinos, religious orders including the Dominicans, and etc. William Henry Scott is an American Episcopalian lay missionary who chose to be a teacher of history and has become a historian of outstanding achievement. He also known as the historian of the ignorance. He has made a more basic contribution to the Philippine historiography. Dr. Scott's writing has been topically both varied and numerous, ranging from history, ethnology, linguistic, folklore, literature, inspiration, and theological discourses. The quality of his mind and heart that glows through his writings is an indication to understand why he has been called the writer of the 5 Gospels. These pictures are the works of William Henry Scott.
Philippine literature during pre-colonial period. Oral lore. Through the exploring works about Philippine history, much can be dependably explained about pre-colonial Philippine writing from an examination of gathered oral lore of Filipinos whose ancestors had the option to save their indigenous culture. But before we proceed to the literary works, let's talk about first how Filipinos' way of life present during pre-colonial times. Filipinos live in villages along seacoasts and riverbanks. Major sources of their food are native fruits, fruit crops, and vegetables were eaten during that time. Aside from that, they were born and woven clothes as their way of the traditional clothing. The men wore pants or a loincloth and usually went topless, as well as wearing tattoos symbolizing power and strength as a warrior, while women went either topless or wore a robe-like dress. And now, let's talk about the oral literary works that went through during pre-colonial period. Epics, tales, songs, riddles, proverbs are the most popular oral lore that was present during pre-colonial time. Epic. In literature, an epic is a long narrative poem, which is normally identified with heroic deeds of an individual of an unusual courage and unmatched bravery. Here are some examples of epics in the Philippines. Biag ni Lamang, Ibalog. Lastly, the famous one, Ibong Adan. Next one is tales or folk tales. A tale is a simple narrative, either fictitious or true, Written or recounted orally in prose or in verse. A tale often recounts a strange event focusing on something or someone exotic, marvelous, or even supernatural. Here are examples of some famous folktales in the Philippines. The Monkey and the Turtle by Dr. Jose Rizal. The Story of Tingi. And last, The Carabao and the Shell. Next one is songs or folk songs. A song is a lyrical poem sung with the playing of some musical instrument. Here are popular folk songs in the Philippines. The next oral lore are riddles. Riddle is a question, a puzzle, a phrase, or a statement devised to get an unexpected or clever answer. Here are some common known riddles. Hindi hayop, hindi tao, pumupulupot sa tiyan mo. Ano ito? The answer would be belt or sinturon. Let's try another one. Ako ay may kaibigan, kasama ko kahit saan. Ano ito? The answer would be shadow or anino. Last one. Magandang prinsesa nakaupo sa tasa. Ano ito? The answer would be cashew or kasoy. Lastly, the proverbs. A proverb is a brief, simple, and popular saying or a phrase that gives advice and effectively embodies a commonplace truth based on practical experiences or common sense. Here are some examples of proverbs.
My report po is about subject matter. Subject matter means people's common experience. Under subject matter is food gathering, creatures and objects of nature, work in home, field, forest, and sea, and did not emphasize authorship, belongs to the community, and the language of daily life. So, unahin na po natin yung pre-colonial food gathering. Filipino usually located along the seashore, rivers, and even in caves. Doon sila sa mga malalapit na lugar na yun tumitira, and doon sa mga lugar na yun na din nila kinukuha yung pagkakabuhayan nila. And nung pre-colonial period po, Filipino food known locally as native food. Then tayong mga Pinoy, meron tayong kilalang native food, which is yung tinatawag na kinilaw. Yung kinilaw po is gawa lang po siya sa raw seafood na may suka. So, yung suka, nakaka-help po siya na parang naluluto na rin po yung mismong seafood natin. So, before, nung wala pa pong fire is kinilaw po yung native food na meron tayo. And then, suddenly, nung nagkaroon na po ng fire, doon na po natuto yung mga local Filipinos na magluto gamit yung fire. And yung una po nilang niluto doon is yung meat. Pero nung niluto po nila doon yung meat is hindi pa po sila gumamit ng kahit na anong seasoning. How does Filipino gather their food during pre-colonial period? Filipinos on pre-colonial period depend their food on nature or on the abundance of their produce. Yun nga po yung sabi ko kanina. Kung saan sila nakatira, kung malapit sila sa dagat, yung magiging pagkain nila is malapit sa dagat. Kung malapit sila sa palayan, yung magiging pagkain nila is sa palayan. And nakadepende po yun sa dami ng maaani nila or sa dami ng mahuhuli nila. Yun na po yung magsisilbi nilang pagkain. So, pagdating po dito sa water, paano nga ba nila ginagather yung food nila? Sa water areas po, is naghahanap sila ng mga fish, shells, and pearl, at yun na po yung nagsisilbi nilang source of living. Yung iba po, kinakain nila doon, and then yung iba, binibenta din po nila. Pagdating naman po sa land, they cultivate or pinaprepare nila yung mga land para pagtaniman ng rice, bananas, and other crops. And then sa forest naman po, nakadepende yung hanap buhay nila sa pamamagitan naman po ng pangangaso. Yung pinakakinuhuli po nila doon is yung mga wild pig, deers, creatures, and objects of nature. During the pre-colonial time, there was already an indigenous spiritual traditions practiced by the people in the Philippines. Their practices was a collection of beliefs and cultural mores anchored in the idea that the world is inhabited by spirits and supernatural entities, both good and bad, and that respect be accorded to them. They believe that their daily lives has a connection of such beliefs. Ito yung mga pinapaniwalaan nila during pre-colonial period. Pag sinabi natin creature, ito yung mga hindi na ipaliwanag na mga bagay, and meron din tayo nun ngayon during modern times. Then when we say object of natures, ito yung mga bagay na sinasamba nila. Example of creatures na nag-exist na during pre-colonial time is yung mangkukulam. Yung mangkukulam is kilala siya noon hanggang ngayon sa Philippines. Sila yung mga gumagamit ng black magic. And then yung tiyanak naman, yung vampiric creature na nagpapanggap or nasa katawan ng bata. And then when we say tikbalang naman po, ano po siya, kalahating tao and kalahating kabayo. And then karaniwan daw po na makikita siya sa mountain and sa forest. Next naman po is yung aswang. Yung aswang naman po, mga tiktek, yun yung mga nag-aanyong tao, anyong hayop, anyong baboy, mga ganon. Next is yung mga object of natures nila. Yung unang-una po is yung anito or diwata. Yung anito or diwata, pinapaniwalaan po nila na may mga spirit na bad and may mga spirit na good. Di ba, pag sa diwata po, yung mga sinasabi na good is yung mga nag-aalaga po sa kalikasan, sasabihin na diwata ng kagubatan or ng ilog, yun, merong mga mabait na ganun and meron din pong masasamang ganun. Next is yung bathala. Yung bathala, siya po yung pinakamataas na nilalang na tinitignan nila. Kumbaga tayo, sa atin, Diyos. Sa kanila, bathala po. Bathala yung tawag sa pinakamataas or supreme God ng mga Tagalog. While laon or aba naman po is same lang po siya sa bathala. Pero ang pinagkaiba is yung laon or aba po is matatagpuan sa Hiligay nun. Then yung gugurang naman po is bathala rin siya, pero gugurang yung term nila sa mga Bicolano. Then when we say kabunian naman po, siya yung supreme God of the universe, and yung sinasamba nila during mga important ceremonies like kasal or may mga rituals po sila sa palay or para umulan, mga ganun po. Then yung sunod po is yung lalaon. Yung lalaon naman po, siya naman po yung tinatawag na God of harvest. Then yung sidapa naman po, siya naman po yung God of death. Next naman po is yung work in home, field, forest, and sea. Ito yung mga work na ginagawa ng mga Filipinos during pre-colonial period. Pagdating po sa home, meron po silang basket weaving, kung saan nag-weave sila ng basket at nagsisilbi na po nila yung source of income. Ganon din po pagdating sa cloth weaving. Makikita naman po natin yun sa mga ninuno po natin sa Ifugao, di ba? Hanggang ngayon, buhay pa rin po yung pagka-cloth weaving nila, and masasabi po na mas maganda yung texture or yung gawa ng cloth weaving kesa po sa tahi natin ngayon. Then, next is pottery, wood carving, and tattoos. Yung tattoos po, hindi po siya kagaya ng tattoo natin ngayon. Kasi, yung tattoo natin ngayon parang made of ano na po siya needle and ink. Before po sa kanila is palo-palo lang po yung ginagamit nila sa pagtatato. Kumbaga, mano-mano lang po yung ginagamit nila. Yun lang po yung ilan sa mga example na work nila sa home nila. Then, next naman po is sa field. Sa field naman po, ang pinaka naging work during pre-colonial time is, of course, agriculture. Source of income or mga pagkain nila is rice, banana, coconuts, sugarcane, cotton, hemp, oranges, and many species of fruits and vegetables. Agriculture is done in two ways. It's either kaingin system or tillage. When we say kaingin system, this is a system wherein they slash and burn yung mismong palayan para magtanim. Wherein the tillage naman po, they are preparing the land to be ready po para mag-grow ng crops. Next is sa forest. Yung work nila doon is pangangaso, kagaya ng deer, goat, and wild pigs. Next naman po is sa sea. Sa sea or sa river po is fishing yung pinakatrabaho na ginagawa ng kalalakihan doon. And gumagamit po sila doon ng spear, wicker, basket, hooks and lines, pati coral and fish poison po. Next is did not emphasize authorships belong to the community. Why would you think po na nasama yung did not emphasize authorship sa pre-colonial period? During pre-colonial period po kasi, yung oral literature did not focus on ownership or copyright, rather on the act of storytelling itself. Karamihan po ng alamat and bugtong na alam natin ngayon is nag-start nung pre-colonial period. But now, ginagamit at kilala pa din po natin siya. Pero, hindi po natin alam kung sino po yung author o kung sino po yung owner ng alamat o ng mismong bugtong. Yun po yung ibig sabihin ng did not emphasize authorship. Because during pre-colonial, they did not emphasize authorship. They focus on storytelling. Parang nagpasalin-salin na lang po yung story hanggang sa naging familiar na lang tayo dun sa mga story pero hindi natin kilala kung sino yung tunay na may akda. Next is languages of daily life. We have 100 languages here in the Philippines po. Pero yung pinaka major languages na ginagamit po natin ngayon is 8 major languages lang po, which is the Tagalog, Ilocano, Pangasinan, Kapampangan, Sugbuhanon, Hiligaynon, Samarnon, and Maguindanao. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Conventions of various oral literary forms. So these conventions, ito yung nagfa-facilitate ng transmission of poems, songs, tales, sayings, and ensured their survival into later times as they move from one individual to another, one community to another, and one generation to another. So first conventions is formulaic repetition. So, this is the use of repetition of various kinds such as repetition of a scene, repetition of lines, rituals, and formulaic passages. So, pag sinabing formulaic, it contains or consists of fixed and repeated words, patterns, or ideas which draws the attention of the audience. Example of formulaic repetition is from the epic The Kingdom of Keboklagan. The hero Taaki is 7 months old, cries for 7 days and 7 nights, sleeps for 7 days and 7 nights, goes fishing for 7 days and 7 nights. So as you can see, the 7 are always repeated. Second conventions is stereotyping of characters. Stereotypes can help an author construct a story. It may help a writer to explain a character's personality or actions, or simply it may be easier to assign a stereotype to a character to work on developing other pieces of the story more fully. Example of stereotyping of character is, in the Philippine epic, hero is usually depicted as having an impressive physical appearance. Third conventions is regular rhythmic and musical devices. Rhythm is achieved basically through drumming, ringing of bells, and the playing of assorted musical instruments and expressed in dance. Some examples of pre-colonial musical instruments include kudyapi, 2-stringed lute made of wood, 1 string for the melody, 1 for the drone. Diu-diu-as, 5 nodes of bamboo of varying length are tied in a row with a rattan string. It is played by blowing across the open holes. Kulintang refers to an ensemble of gongs laid in a row.
Hey, for the next topic is all about native syllabary. First, what is syllabary? It is a phonetic writing system consisting of symbols representing syllables. Here are the examples. Native syllabary was used before Spaniards came and brought to us a Roman alphabet. These are the following: 3 vowels and 14 consonants. Perishable materials destroyed by missionaries against pagan culture. Perishable materials classified of artifacts that provides basic information. Animistic, worship objects. They believe that natural objects have souls that may exist apart from their material bodies. What are the ways in which indigenous culture literature survived? First is resistance to colonial rule done by Manaus, Tausog, Mindanao, and Ifugao. Next is virtual isolation from centers of colonial power done by Mangyan, Bilacan, Islands, etc. Riddles and proverbs, simplest form of oral literature. Proverbs popular saying, phrases that gives advices, little rhetorical device or double meaning. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leonard Garcia and I will be reporting about Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala. Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala. Ito ang kauna-unahang diksionaryong wikang Tagalog sa Pilipinas na naisulat ng isang prayleng Pransiskano na si Pedro de Buenaventura. Ang Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala ni Buenaventura ay nagtataglay ng 16,350 mga salita na nakapaloob sa 618 na pahina ng unang bahagi. Sinimulang katahalain ni Buenaventura ang Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala noong ika-20 ng Mayo 1606. Natapos ang paglimbag ng vokabularyo noong ika-27 ng Mayo 1613. Ito ay nilimbag ni Thomas Pintwin at Domingo Laog sa Noble Villa de Pila na nasa Pagalangan, Victoria, Laguna. Nang malathala noong 1754, ang Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala ni Juan Jose de Noceda at Pedro de Sanlúcar, ito yata ang pinakamatagal na inihandang aklat sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas. Humigit kumulang sa 150 taon ang ginugol ng mga misyoneryong nagtipon sa mga salitang ipinaloob sa diksyonaryo. Ang Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala ay tinuturing bilang pangunahing sanggunian hinggil sa mga inilimbag na halimbawa ng sinaunang maikling tula, mula sa bugtong at saliwakain hanggang sa Diona, Dalit at Tanaga. Ginamit ito ni William Henry Scott upang balikan ang industriya ng mga Tagalog pagdating ng mga Espanyol. Ginamit ito ni Julian Cruz Balmaceda, Bienvenido Lumbera at Virgilio S. Almario upang aninawin ang katutubong pagtula. Ipinagpatuloy ni Sanlúcar ang pagwawasto at pagdaragdag sa bokabularyo hanggang mamatay. Ang lumabas na edisyong 1860 sa gayon ay tinapos ng mga Agustino. Sa edisyong ito, maaaring si Sanlúcar ang sumulat ng algunas advertencias para el uso de este vocabulario. Gayunman, mga padring Agustino ang nagdagdag ng suplemento na maituturing na naglalaman na ng mga bagong salita sa wikang Tagalog nitong ika-19 siglo. Ang Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala ay paulit-ulit na inedit hanggang sa huling edisyon nito noong 2013.
Hi, I'm Marvin Alcazar, and I will be reporting about monorhyming heptasyllabic lines, or what we call monorhyme. It refers to a poem which has every 2 lines with an identical rhyme, or all the lines with the same end rhyme, which consists of 7 syllables per line. And it also appeared in the Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala, a rare Spanish source of early oral lore obtained direct from the people. An example of a monorhyming heptasyllabic is Tanaga. Tanaga is an extended form of the proverb expressing its message with intense emotion. It's an indigenous type of Filipino poem that it used traditionally in the Tagalog language. The modern Tanaga is used in a variety of Philippine languages and English due to popularity in the 20th century. It consists of 4 lines with 7 syllables each, with the same rhyme at the end of each line. Here is the example of Tanaga. Katitibay kang tulos, sakaling gatnan ng agos, ako'y mumunting lumot, sa iyo'y pupulupot. That Tanaga is attributed to friars Juan de Noceda and Pedro de Sanlúcar by Bim Nadera, and quoted them as saying, Poesía muy alta en Tagalog, compuesta de 7 sílabas, y 4 versos, liana de metáfora, noong 16th century. Sa wikang Ingles ay, Poetry is quite high in Tagalog, composed of 7 syllables and 4 verses, full of metaphor. Tanaga traditionally do not have any titles. They are poetic forms that should speak for themselves. Poets test their skills at rhyme, meter, and metaphor through Tanaga. not only because it is rhymed and measured, but also it exacts skillful use of words to create a puzzle that demands some kind of an answer. Alam niyo ba na ang Tanaga ay almost considered a dying art form, but is currently being revived by the Cultural Center of the Philippines and National Commission of the Arts. Noon pa mga pre-colonial times, tayo mga Pilipino ay masasabi ng lover of lyrics and verses, katulad ng mga folk songs. One of these is Ambahan. Ambahan is a mangyang song depicts human relationships in social entertainment that serves as a tool for teaching the young. Composed of 7-syllable line ending in rhymes, and the texts are commonly written on bamboo. Written in Surat Mangyan, Hanuno, a centuries-old pre-Spanish script. Now, let's move on to lyric poetry. What is lyric poetry? Originally, this refers to that kind of poetry meant to be sung with the accompaniment of a lyre. But now, this applies to any types of poetry that expresses emotions and feelings of the poet. They are usually short, simple, and easy to understand. Now, let's talk about the types of lyric poetry. Number 1. Folk song or awiting bayan. These are short poems intended to be sung. The common theme is love, despair, grief, doubt, joy, hope, and sorrow. An example of this is Chit Chirit Chit.
Chit Chirit Chit, alibang-bang, sa laginto, sa latubang, ang babae sa lansangan, kung gumiri parang tanda.
Number 2. Sonnets. This is lyric poem of 14 lines dealing with an emotion, a feeling, or an idea. There are two types, the Italian and the Shakespearean. Example, Santang Buds by Alfonso P. Santos. Number 3. Elegy. Lyric poem which expresses feelings of grief and melancholy and whose theme is death. Example, Elehiya para kay Ram ni Pat Villapuerte. Number 4. Ode. Lyric poem of a noble feeling expressed with dignity, with no definite number of syllables or definite number of lines in a stanza. Example, Ode to My Angel by Michael Flores. Number 5. Psalms. Lyric poem, a song praising God or Virgin Mary and containing a philosophy of life. Example, ang mga dalit kay Maria.
Halina, halina, tayo'y mag-alay ng mga bulaklak kay Maria.
Number 6. Song or awit. Have measure of 12 syllables or dodecasillabic and slowly sung to the accompaniment of a guitar or bandurria. Example, Florante and Laura by Francisco Balagtas. And lastly, number 7. Corridos or corridas. Have measures of 8 syllables or octosyllabic and recited to a martial beat. Example, Ibong Adarna by Jose de la Cruz. The next reporter will tackle about prose narrative.
Hi, my name is Nerd Garcia and I'm here to report about prose narratives and types of prose.
Prose narrative. Prose is a form of language which applies ordinary grammatical structure and natural flow of speech rather than rhythmic structure, just like in poetry. Prose is a communicative style that sounds natural and uses grammatical structure. Prose is the opposite of verse or poetry, which employs a rhythmic structure that does not mimic ordinary speech. Most forms of writing and speaking are done in prose, including short stories and novels, journalism, academic writing, and regular conversations. Narrative prose is a form of writing in which the work is written in prose rather than in poetry and tells a definite story through actions. Many written works are written in this form, including a great deal of literary work and most modern pieces of fiction. The narrative aspect of this style comes from the fact that events occur and are narrated within the work rather than having events occur outside of the framework of the story. Narrative prose also means that the story is told in a prose format, which is basic language, rather than a poetic format that may deal with meter and rhyme. Narrative prose typically consists of a narrative story written in a fairly clear prose format. This does not mean that these stories are inherently simplistic, however, as very complex and detailed stories are crafted using this format. It simply means that these works are written as action-driven stories in which events occur and characters are seen taking part in them. Types of prose. Novels. Novels are a long narrative divided into chapters, and events are taken from true-to-life stories. Example of novel is No Limitang by Dr. Jose Rizal. Plays. Plays are presented on stage. It is divided into acts, and each act has many scenes. Example of play is Florante at Laura by Francisco Balagtas. Short story. Short story is a narrative involving one or more characters, one plot, and one single impression. Example of short story is The Laughter of My Father by Carlos Bolosan. Legends. Legends are fictitious narratives, usually about origins. For example, The Bicol Legend by Pio Duran. Fables. These are also fictitious and they deal with animals and inanimate things that speak and act like people, and their purpose is to enlighten the minds of children to events that can mold their ways and attitudes. For example, The Monkey and the Turtle, or sa Tagalog ay ang Pagong at ang Matching. Anecdotes. These are merely products of the writer's imagination and the main aim is to bring out lessons to the reader. For example, The Moth and the Lamp. Biography. This deals with the life of a person which may be about himself, his autobiography, or that of others. Example, The First Filipino by Leon Guerrero. Essay. This expresses the viewpoint or opinion of the writer about a particular problem or event. News. This is a report of everyday events in society, government, science and industry, and accidents happening nationally or not. Oration. This is a formal treatment of a subject and is intended to be spoken in public. It appeals to be the intellect, to the will, or to the emotions of the audience.
And that's all for prose narratives and types of prose. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Lyrica Panal and I'm here to report about folk epic. Philippine folk epic is the body of epic poetry in Philippine literature. It is considered as the highest point of development for Philippine folk literature. It includes narratives that tells the adventures of tribal heroes. It is transmitted through oral tradition using select group of singers and chanters. A study revealed that the Philippine folk epics, like those found in Asia, are often about a quest for a wife as well as the various ordeals linked to the founding of a family, hamlet, tribe, or kingdom. Examples are Biyag ni Lamang, an Ilocano epic, Ibalon, a Bicolano epic, Hudhud hi Aluguyon, and Ifugao harvest song, and so forth. Next is E.R. Senyo Manuel. He is a Philippine academic, historian, and anthropologist best known for his contributions to Philippine anthropology, history, literature, and linguistics. He is also referred to as Dean of Filipino Anthropology and Father of Philippine Folklore. During a 3-decade academic career at the University of the Philippines, he wrote a seminal survey of Philippine folk epics and was responsible for discovering and publishing folk epics from the Manuvu, which means native people. They are part of an ethno-linguistic group called Bagobo in Mindanao, Matigsalug, which means people along the Salig River, now called the Davao River, are Bukidnon groups who are found in the Tigwa Salug Valley in San Fernando, Bukidnon Province, and Ilinon people. Ilinon is a Malay term of pirate from Maguindanao Province. Arsenio Manuel defines heroic narratives in verse as folk epics or ethnographics and describes their common characteristics. The first common features is narratives of sustained length. According to the literary critic Damiana L. Eugenio, a Philippine folk epic has 11 functions. These functions from the sequence of the narrative. First, the hero leaves home. Then he will acquire the use of magical agent. Next, is transferred, delivered, or led to the whereabouts of a lost object and person who is a loved one. Then the hero starts a battle and hero fights for a long time. Then the god or goddess comes and stops the fight and reveals that the hero and his enemy are related by blood. The hero dies, the hero resurrects, the hero returns home, then finally, the hero is married. To date, more than 20 folk epic texts have been collected, transcribed, translated, and published. However, many more still have to be transcribed, translated, and edited for publication. The next 5 common features of folk epic will be discussed by the next reporter. Thank you.
Based on oral tradition. Oral tradition are the means by which cultural transmission occurs over generations. Other than through written records, it expresses spiritual and emotional truths through symbols or metaphors, such as events, situations from the past. Revolving around supernatural events, heroic deeds. Lamang Ilocano, for instance, has a power over the forces of nature. He summons the winds to fan the flame when he wants to burn rice straws and beckons to the torrential rain to put out the fire. With a certain seriousness of purpose embodying or validating the customs, ideals, or life values of the people. The Philippine epic hero possesses a very strong sense of duty towards his family and towards other people who needs help. The values of bravery, strength, and fighting prowess stand at the head of the qualities admired in hero. Lamang rescued his father from the captivity of their enemies by killing them except one, who witnessed his might. In the form of verse. For example, Hinilawad recounts the story of the exploits of three Solodnon demigod brothers, Labaw Donggon, Humadapnon, and Dumalatdap of ancient Panay. It will take about 3 days to perform the epic in its original form, thus making it as one of the longest epics in the world. Chanted or sung. For example, Hinilanod Sulud, Kudaman Palawan, Tudbulol Tibuli. These are sung or chanted to the accompaniment of indigenous musical instruments and dancing performed during harvest, weddings, or funerals by chanters. The chanters who were taught by their ancestors are considered treasures and repositories of wisdom in their communities.
Biag ni Lamang is one of the first epic poem of the Ilocano people from the Ilocos region of the Philippines. It is notable for being the first Philippine folk epic to be recorded in written form. Biag ni Lamang was written by a Filipino blind poet named Pedro Bocanig in year 1640, and he was acknowledged because of this story. Biag ni Lamang was one of the only 2 folk epics documented during the Philippines Spanish colonial period. The other one is Hanjong from the Colonial epic. For us to understand more about the bravery of Lamang, here is a summary of his story.
Don Juan and his wife Namuman live in Alboan, now part of La Union in the northern part of the Philippines. They had a son named Lamang. Before Lamang was born, Don Juan went to the mountains in order to punish a group of their Igorot enemies. While he was away, his son Lamang was born. It took 4 people to help Namoman give birth. As soon as the baby boy popped out, he spoke and asked that he be given the name Naman. He also chose his godparents and asked where his father was. After 9 months of waiting for his father to return, Lamang decided he would go look for him. Namangan thought Lamang was up to the challenge, but she was sad to let him go. During his exhausting journey, he decided to rest for a while. He fell asleep and had a dream about his father's head being stuck on a pole by the eagle. Lamang was furious when he learned what happened to his father. He rushed to their village and killed them all, except for one whom he let go so that he could tell other people about Lamang's greatness. Upon returning to Nalbawan in triumph, he was bathed by women in the Ambarayan River. All the fish died because of the dirt and odor from Lamang's body. There was a young woman named Ines Kanawi, and Lamang wanted to know. She lived in Kalandian, and he brought along his rooster and dog to visit her. On the way, Lamang met his enemy, Sumara, another suitor of Ines whom he fought and readily defeated. Lamang found the house of Ines surrounded by many suitors, all of whom were trying to catch her attention. He had his rooster crow, which caused a nearby house to fall. This made Ines look out. He had his dog bark, and in an instant, the fallen house rose up again. The girl's parents witnessed this and called for him. The rooster expressed the love of Lamang. The parents agreed to a marriage with their daughter if Lamang would give them a dowry valued at double their wealth. Lamang had no problem fulfilling this condition, and he and Ines were married. It was a tradition to have a newly married man swim in the river for the rarang fish. Unfortunately, Lamang dove straight into the mouth of the water monster PRE-COLONIAL. Ines had Marcus get his bones, which he covered with a piece of cloth. His rooster crawled and his dog barked, and slowly the bones started to move. Back alive, Lamang and his wife lived happily ever after with his rooster and dog.
Ngayon ay ikukwento ko sa inyo ang epiko na pinamagatang Hinilawod. Noong unang panahon, may isang diyosa ng kalangitan na nagngangalang Alunsina at nakapag-asawa siya ng isang mortal na si Datu Paubari. Nagsilang ng 3 malulusog na sanggol na lalaki si Alunsina. Labis-labis ang kaligayahan ng mag-asawa sa pagdating ng kanilang mumunting biyaya. Pinangalanan nilang Labaw Donggon, Humadapnon at Dumalapdap. Pinatawag nila ang paring si Bungot Banwa upang isagawa ang ritual na magdudulot ng mabuting kalusugan ng 3. Pagkatapos ng ritual, ang 3 sanggol ay biglang naging malalakas at makikisig na binata. Sa 3 magkakapatid, si Labaw Donggon ang nagpakita ng interes sa mga magagandang babae. Nang marinig niya na may magandang babae sa handog, nagpaalam siya sa kanyang ina upang hanapin ang kanyang mga magiging asawa. Nagtungo agad siya sa bayan ng handog na nasa bukana ng Ilog Halawod upang hanapin ang dalagang si Anggoy Gitbitinan. Bago niya nakuha si Anggoy Ginbitinan, nakipaglaban muna siya sa isang halimaw. Nang napatay niya ang halimaw, ay ikinasal agad sila at naglakbay pabalik sa bayan ni Labaw Donggon. Inihabilin niya ang asawa sa kanyang ina upang hanapin ang isa pang babae na gusto niyang maging pangalawang asawa. Siya'y naglakbay patungo sa Tarambang Burok at nagtagumpay siya na mapaibig ang dalaga na si Anggoy Daroonan. Hindi pa roon nagtapos ang kanyang paghahanap ng mapapangasawa sapagkat paglipas ng ilang panahon, Nabalitaan na naman niyang may napakagandang babae, si Sinagmaling Diwata na asawa ni Saragnayan, ang Diyos ng Kadiliman. Ipinagpaalam niya sa kanyang mga asawa ang kanyang balak at inihabilin niya ulit ang mga ito sa kanyang ina. Naglaban ng maraming taon sina Saragnayan at Labaw Dunggon para sa kamay ng nag-iisang diwata na si Sinagmaling Diwata. Ngunit sa kasamaang palad, natalo si Labaw Dunggon. Iginapos ni Saragnayan ang mga kamay at paa ni Labaw Dunggon at ikinulong sa isang kulungan sa ilalim ng kanilang tahanan. Samantala, kapwa nanganak na ang dalawang asawa ni Labaw Dunggon. Kapwa nilang hinanap ang kanilang ama. Sa kanilang paghahanap ay nagkasalubong ang magkapatid sa karagatan. Nakipaglaban sila kay Saragnayan upang pakawalan nito ang kanilang binilanggong ama. Nang napatay nila si Saragnayan, hindi pa rin nila natagpuan si Labaw Dunggon. Tumulong na rin ang ibang miyembro ng pamilya sa paghahanap kay Labaw Dunggon. Pagkalipas ng mahabang panahon ng paghahanap, natagpuan din nila si Labaw Dunggon. Ngunit wala na ang dating kakisigan at lakas nito. Sila'y nagtulungan at nagsagawa agad ang pamilya ng isang ritual at seremonya para maibalik ang dating lakas at kisig ni Labaw Dunggon. Hindi nga nagtagal ay muling nagbalik sa dati ang lahat.